Good day. My name is Teresa Fredericks from Growing Businesses Using Projects, bringing you another video in the procurement series. We are looking at the implementation of the Procurement Act of Trinidad and Tobago on settled issues. We are dealing with the procurement cycle, and this is part B of the cycle. Here we are completing the cycle, and we are taking a look at emergency procurements and a need for a fast-track system. We are going to be looking at the completion of the procurement cycle. We're going to be treating with emergency procurements, what's in the Procurement Act and regulations. We are going to be looking at the jump from traditional procurement to modern procurement without enough thinking of where we are, the procurement environment. We're looking at traditional procurement management versus modern public procurement. And we're going to get my thoughts on the procurement cycle, a need for a fast-track system. Now, if you're joining the series at this video, you should stop it and go back to the start, because all the background and where we were and where we are heading is in previous videos. In the video number 3, we looked at the procurement cycle, and we started from defined procurement need until we reach the installation of the standstill period. The standstill period is a new period that has been introduced where the procurement process stops, and it gives the suppliers or contractors who are unsuccessful in the procurement an opportunity to challenge the decision that is being made with respect to the procurement. After that, there is the issue of the notice of acceptance. This is in the event that there is no challenge, or whatever challenges there will have been rectified. You go on to issue notice of acceptance, then you finalize and execute the contract. There's the commencement of the contract, the receipts of goods, and the monitoring of goods and services. You make payment, and a compulsory area you report on the performance of the provider. This report is a very important area. The duly authorized representative from the procuring entity completes the supplier or contract performance report and submits to the procurement department. The report may be completed on completion of the contract, where the contract is of a short duration or periodically due for long-term contracts. This is fed back to the OPR, so they have some idea of the performance of the supplier or contractor. In the last video, we talked about the difficulty with the system and the fact that it takes over 2 months to complete the cycle, even to the point of award of contract, because area of thresholds. Because there is in the procurement regulations the fact that there can be thresholds in terms of the cycle, and what is said in this regulation, the office may by guidelines establish different thresholds to be used for different methods of procurement. A procurement recognizes that there are some thresholds, but it has not been fully explained or explored in the handbooks. And what I have taken here is just a part of this particular regulation. There's much as stated relative to thresholds, about 1.5 pages, so that you can actually go back to the regulations and see what is said. But my concern remains that the existing cycle is very long. And for instance, what we have to keep thinking of is what happened recently, where you had a main burst and 200,000 persons were without water. And whereas we could say this could be treated under emergency procurement, the point is these things will happen continually, and different things, but it's all requiring spontaneous response. So this is what we have to look for. Is there anything in the Act that would allow for us to be able to move in and within a day or two get a supplier on the job to ensure that the public does not suffer? For instance, if a bridge breaks down or something like that, and you may say this could be treated under emergency procurement, What I'm saying is that if your standard cycle is over 2 months, there has to be a shorter cycle, because you may have to respond to a situation within 1 or 2 weeks. So that this is what we are looking for, and this is why I decided to examine what it is there in terms of emergency procurement. The OPR's comprehensive handbook said an emergency is considered an urgent and unexpected requirement where the conservation of public resources is at risk. Where an emergency exists, a procuring entity may pursue procurement contracts without complying with formal competitive bidding requirements. Under such conditions, a waiver of the competitive bidding requirements will be approved by the accounting officer. When there is insufficient time to procure via competitive bidding due to an unexpected need, a purchase is made to fulfill this need. It cautioned, however, that failure to properly plan in advance, which results in a situation in which normal practices cannot be followed, does not constitute an emergency. But if your existing procurement system is over 2 months, anything that happens or has to happen within a 2-week or 3-week period is not accounted for, because it is not accounted for in terms of a proper system that government officials can use to fulfill this need. Science procurement methods and procedures says in cases of urgency following a natural disaster or similar catastrophe, the 2 methods available are competitive negotiations and single source procurement. The requirement to maximize competition will determine the most appropriate method for emergency procurement. In conditions for use of these methods, as they refer respectively to an urgent and an extremely urgent need for the goods, works, or services as a result of the catastrophe. In each case, the urgency renders it impractical to use open bidding proceedings or any other method of procurement because of the time involved in using them. Although both competitive negotiations and single source procurement are considered to provide less competition as well as objectivity and transparency than other procurement methods, it is clear that competition is to some degree present in competitive negotiations and is essentially absent in single source procurement. Further states that only where there is extreme degree of urgency can single source procurement be justified, such as for the needs that arise in the immediate aftermath of a catastrophe, for example for clean water, emergency food and shelter, or immediate medical needs. Other needs, which may still arise as a direct result of the catastrophe, involve a time frame that allows the use of competitive negotiations rather than single source procurement. The further in time from the catastrophe, the less likely it is that either of these methods remains available, because there will be time to use other methods. And let us ponder about the time to use other methods. These high value and high risk types of procurements take 2+ months to be done. So that is the other method we have in place. And we are saying for emergency procurement, we can use single source, etc. But imagine we are in the midst of a flood, you're going to do negotiations and all that to get contractors out. How practical that is. So what am I seeing as the issue? What am I seeing as the problem? That was one of the things I'm looking at is where we came from and where we are going. We transitioned from a traditional procurement system where many organizations and persons that now come under the Procurement Act did little procurement, and even some government agencies did not have fully functioning procurement units. The system was one that was not focused on and was unresponsive to the inherent risk and opportunities. The main instrument was tendering, and the Central Tenders Board has no jurisdiction over public-private partnership arrangements, which is a financial type of procurement, and only did tendering and disposals. And we are going in a leap from here to best practices in modern procurement that involves active identification and management of the risk and opportunities inherent in procuring the range of goods, services, and works that are required. Procurement regulator controls all parts of the procurement and disposal cycle, as opposed to the Central Tenders Board that only controlled part. And now the procurement regulator has to oversee challenges to procurement decisions. And I forgot to mention this in the work of the procurement department, but this could be a big amount of work if they have many challenges that come from the public bodies unresolved and have to be resolved by the OPR. And agencies, etc., have to now work on the whole procurement cycle, even in areas they never were involved in. So the government, the public bodies never did a lot of the disposals. They have to now do it. They have to do retention, and I forgot to talk about retention, but the Act deals with procurement, retention, and disposal, and it has to do all of that right now. So let us look at what that meant. Now I had circled a part I want you to pay attention to. In the traditional public procurement, the same fundamental procedures were applied with equal efficacy across all procurement transactions. But in the new modern procurement, the approach to be taken to each procurement action depends on the objectives to be achieved and the actual supply risk that are identified. And I am assuming you see this, a lot of this new procurement law is hinged on risk assessments, which I am sure will be challenged. What do we think in terms of where to go next in terms of making the implementation of the Act a little easier? And I'm saying there's a need for a fast-track system. What is there in terms of handling emergency procurements cannot handle anything that you have to make decisions on under 2 months. Let us face it. The procurement cycle that is there for the high risk, high value, which will be the types of procurements you may have to make decisions on, it takes over 2 months. So our present reality as a country, we have to think we are in an environment in which there is often the need for emergency action that requires suppliers, contractors to be quickly mobilized. Emergencies happen almost every week with one of the agencies. We have a lot of things to be done in terms of pipes to replace and a whole set of other things. It's not just WASA. Across the board, we're going to have emergencies that cannot be settled in 2 to 3 weeks, 2 months plus. Our current procurement cycle for high value, high risk, and low risk, high value procurements and its ability to quickly respond to emergencies. We have to look at that cycle. Can we put in something that will allow us to respond to things within 2 to 3 weeks or more, but not over 2 months? Our limited emergency procedures as identified in the Procurement Act and the procurement regulations, and the ability to use this effectively to deal with 2 above. The emergency procedures and what is said cannot handle a situation where invariably government departments will have to respond to things in terms of mobilizing contractors under 2 months. The involvement of local government to deal with some of the issues highlighted in these 2 videos, videos 3 and 4 of the procurement series. The next video, I'm going to be talking about a possible role for local government to deal with some of the procurement issues. And one of the main issues is the overworking of the OPR. The OPR has too much work to do. And what we want them to concentrate on is on the big projects and the leakage of government funding. I'm Teresa Fredericks, and if you like my content, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe.